Oh man, can you believe it? We're back. We're back. Let's do this. Let's go. There we are. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time it might be where you are out there. Welcome back to the live stream. My name is Jeff Fritz. You know me as CSharpFritz. I'm out there on the internet. You can find me on YouTube, on Twitch, I'm still going to call it Twitter, talking about all things .NET, and particularly in this series, we're going to start today. We're going to talk about Blazor. We're going to get in and talk about the new web development framework that our friends on the .NET team have been building and evolving. And it's got an amazing set of new features that we're going to cover over the next few weeks here, live on stream together. As always, these are discussion-focused sessions. There's lots of great content that we're going to get into later on in the stream. We're going to walk through and do some demos. We're going to answer questions. We're going to engage with you, the chatters out there. Now, if you're watching the recording on YouTube, you can skip forward. There's going to be a timer that pops up here as we go through a little bit of an AMA up front, answering questions folks have about all things Microsoft developer tech, whether it's Visual Studio Code, .NET, Azure. We're going to talk about all those things, dig in and have a really nice discussion here up front. So if you want to skip forward, go ahead and do that. Check out the slider down below if you're watching the recording on YouTube. If you're joining us and you're watching live, ask questions out there in chat. I am watching every question. No comment will go unanswered, unaddressed. All right? We want to go through and catch up with you. Talk about all the cool things that are going on in tech. We want to celebrate your successes. We want to help you get over the hump and solve those problems, move forward and be successful in your career with Microsoft developer technology. Well, all questions that are on topic. Let me bring up the chat room. They're right over here. Look at that. They're in the window over here, as it were. Let me scroll through chat and catch up with some folks. We're broadcasting live on YouTube and Twitch, so if one doesn't work for you, go check out the other, youtube.com/dotnet, dotnet. We're on Twitch at Twitch TV/Visual Studio, all one word. And we're going to be here about the next 8 weeks or so. We'll see how it goes. We'll see how your feedback is, and that'll determine if we go longer, if we do some more, and how the series is received, of course. So over here, there's lots of questions and comments that are scrolled off the top there. C-Sharp Titans here on YouTube. Good evening to you in Australia. Gigi is here from the UK. I hope I pronounced that right. Hello. Christina, how you doing there on YouTube? Napalm Codes. That's right. We're bringing this one back because there have been so many changes in Blazor. There's so many things that folks have questions about, things we want to discuss, things we want to get into and help you with. So we're absolutely going to dive in and talk more about all the cool stuff going on. How you doing there? Hola, Eduardo on YouTube. Helder is here, updating your manufacturing execution system to .NET 8. I'd love to hear more, Helder, how that goes, and what kind of a difference you see when you get to .NET 8. You hear a lot of folks on the .NET team, on the Microsoft teams, talking about when you upgrade to .NET 8, there's a big performance improvement that you see. I'd love to hear more about your experience as you get there, okay? And that goes for everybody. If you're watching these streams and you're doing an upgrade to .NET 8, let me know how it goes. Let me know what you see and experience as you complete it and what kind of a difference you see in how processor and memory utilization was before the upgrade and after, all right? How you doing there? Surly Dev is here on Twitch. Smab, hello, hello. We haven't had one. It's been 8-9 months since we've been on these streams. Yeah. I will answer all questions that are on the topics of the products we're discussing here. Yes. What is the meaning of life 42? 8 weeks. That's right. We're going to be going for about 8 weeks. Now, an hour or two today, and there will be every Wednesday for the next 8 weeks episodes. I tell you, I can't trust any of these folks over here. The trolling is strong from the Twitch group. How you doing there? Is it Yoni Torrado in Portugal? Good to see you. How you doing there, Ionescu? No, it's not a surprise. I mentioned this yesterday on the other live streams that we do. Surly Dev says, I so need to get started with Blazor. I think it might make me less surly, but do I need to wear a Blazor to code in Blazor? It is better to look good than to feel good, is what Fernando used to say. You don't need to wear a Blazor to code in Blazor, but it's going to make you look fantastic. I highly recommend, and if you're going to wear a Blazor while you're coding in Blazor, make it a purple one. Your coworkers will applaud you for that. How you doing there, Les Blondes 91? Hello, I'm glad you're happy to see us here. What is going on for Blazor in 2024? Asks Ionescu. Before I answer that, let me get some music playing in the background. Of course, I have these streams, and I like to keep it kind of upbeat, kind of something groovy in the background. So I'm going to play the Stream Beats Synthwave playlist. Let me get this playing in the background here. I'm going to go with, this is called Lost Bytes. We'll start here. This is music that's DMCA free. It's royalty free. Check it out wherever you are on the internet at streambeats.com. There's playlists available for Spotify, Apple Music, and Amazon Music. Big thanks to Harris Heller and his team of creators for putting this music together we're listening to today. So Ionescu asks, what's coming up for Blazor in 2024? Blazor, like the rest of .NET, is an open source framework. Available for anybody to take a look at, contribute to, file issues on, comment on. It's all on GitHub. You can head out to github.com/.net/ASP.NET, and you'll see you'll see the source code for ASP.NET, and Blazor's been wrapped up in there, and you'll see everything that's going on and being built and as it evolves for the product. There are issues opened around plans. Most of the plans that are published and that are out there are around performance updates, polishing a bit of the features, the capabilities that were defined and added in .NET 8. A number of fixes have already been released as of the version that's available at the time of this recording at the end of February 2024. That is version 8.0.2. You'll see there's a bunch of fixes in there that make particularly transferring data between various render modes, and that's going to be an important topic we're going to learn about today. You're going to see significant patches and updates there, but the big features that the Blazor team is working on are around performance, size of the executable, integrations, better integration with Blazor Hybrid. You're going to see these things discussed right now. There'll be more as they get through and other topics, other features are approved and added to the projected feature list for .NET 9. Now, of course, .NET scheduled for an annual release every November. We've been doing this since 2019, going on 6 years now. So .NET 8 was released in November 2023, .NET 7 in November 2022, .NET 6 November 2021, and so on and so forth, as part of our conference .NET Conf. Of course, you've seen that on these channels live, running as a virtual event. We've got lots of stuff that we want to do for that event again this year. No announcements or anything planned or ready to share about that, but of course, you know we're releasing .NET in November. So you better believe there'll be a .NET Conf with it. Igor is here from Brazil. Hello, greetings. Welcome in. I love seeing our Brazilian friends chiming in here. Is it 60 on YouTube says, hey, just wondering, will I mention anything new since the last .NET Blazor YouTube tutorials? Oh, yes. We're going to go through and look at the templates today, and we're going to talk a little bit about the Razor template engine, and we're going to talk about render modes. We're going to touch on what each one of them means, how they behave, and how you can start to mix them. But we're going to have a new version, an updated version of all the Blazor tutorials that uses the render modes, the new security features, the new integrations that are available between those various render modes, and particularly the new server-side rendering of Blazor. We're going to do all of that through this series. So, and of course, doing the typical AMA as we go along here. I forgot to turn on the AMA counter. There it is, 40 minutes on the clock. We go for 40 minutes. That puts us right up to about through the first hour, answering all of your questions, and having a discussion with you about all things Microsoft tech. So happy to have a Jeff here, says Thin Dog, instead of him hiding out at the summit. That's right. I will not be at Microsoft MVP Summit this year. I'll be here talking to you fine folks. Yeah, everybody is doing awesome. Cold Metal is it Cold Metal on Twitch? Says so fast. .NET 8 is not that old. You're right. You're absolutely right. And .NET 8 is what we call a long-term support release, an LTS, and that what that gives you is assurance, reliability that version of .NET will be supported for the next 3 years. So that was released in 2023. You're going to have until midway through 2027 that version will be supported fully with security patches, with updates that are necessary for .NET 8. There'll be new versions. Of course, you always want your technical products and frameworks. You want folks investing in building new features and keeping, especially web frameworks and those types of technologies, mobile development technologies. You want those kept current. So there are new versions and patches that will be released, complete new major version every November, and there are patches that are released throughout the year. So absolutely, not that old, but as always with Microsoft developer tools, there is a strong backwards compatibility capability that's built in, right? Every now and again, there's going to be a hard break, and we saw it first in 20 years hard break when we had .NET Core released compared to .NET Framework. And you needed to rewrite because some of the user interface frameworks did not come over. However, most of them did. And there was a good amount of compatibility between them, and we even provided tools to help you get there. Not completely get there, but help you get there, because there's new decisions to be made about your technology, about your software you're writing. On YouTube, hey, Juan is here from, right, Juan? From Spain. Hello, welcome. Let me see here. Oh, good, I did pronounce the name right. Cold Metal, yes. Let me see. Napalm Code says the thing that drives them crazy about LTS is a lot of shops use it as a reason to not upgrade to the latest bits. This isn't a bad statement that Napalm is saying here. That folks use it as an upgrade, as a reason not to upgrade. Upgrading is definitely an investment that folks have to make. It's definitely a decision that needs to be made. And if you're updating your software, you can't take that decision lightly. So folks saying, I don't want to spend a month doing an upgrade when I can spend a month being more productive and doing more things, adding features to my software that my end users will actually appreciate and use. That's something. That's something really, really important for those folks to balance the technical needs versus the customer's needs. That said, if you have a continuous integration system inside your ecosystem, your project system, whether it's GitHub Actions, it's Azure DevOps, it's Jenkins, it's whatever it might be, TeamCity, you can test upgrades very quickly on a separate branch. Fork your source code, try the upgrade, just flip the version numbers and see what happens. Take a day and flip the version numbers, try the upgrade, see what happens. And if it works great, fantastic. The challenge that I hear folks have is they don't know what they don't know when they just flip a version. This is where integration testing, unit tests, testing with tools like Playwright will help you have that reassurance that you've been able to upgrade and all of your key scenarios work the way that you expected them to. So continuous integration isn't just build the application, but run the tests. Make sure things work the way they're supposed to. How you doing there, Jens? Good to see you over there on Twitch. On YouTube, is it Minum? Asks, thoughts on Bill Gates? Guy's certainly a pillar of the technical industry. Lit the world on fire back in the early 80s as he started and established Microsoft. A brilliant man who knows his technology inside and out. The discussions that he has around the technical products shows a lot of insight, not just into how the product works, how a typical customer might use it, but also the technical workings underneath those products. He's got insight into these things. The things that have happened in his personal life, that have happened in and around his personal relationships, they're not for me to discuss. I have no insight in that whatsoever, except for what's been reported, and there's no need for me to comment on that. Some support and maintenance contracts require you to be on an LTS. True, Lanky Scottish Nerd. Yes. Continuing here, in the enterprise space, LTS releases are very much the norm. Let me see here. Continuing to scroll. Yes, he does have a wonderful mugshot. So, how you doing there? Low Viz on Twitch. Low Viz asking, what's the last game I played? Yesterday afternoon, I finished a couple meetings. I did a little bit of writing for for some other YouTube videos that I'm recording today. We're going to be publishing today. I got into a little bit of Overwatch 2. I've been a longtime Blizzard fan, even before they were acquired by Microsoft. But before Activision Blizzard was acquired, I do not have any insider license or insider info about Activision and what's going on with their studios. But I was playing Overwatch 2. I don't have any kind of coupon or any freebie to get skins or anything, any of the features in the game. But I've been playing a bit of Overwatch 2, and I've been bouncing back and forth between Reinhardt, Diva, and Sigma is the third. I like playing the tanks in Overwatch 2. I really enjoy that. You heard something about a card game, says Thindall. Yes, so when we first started this series way back in 2021, we kicked off with the series teaching folks the basics of C#. And I had a number of requests in November, in December to bring that back. And there's other folks that are talking about the basics of C# on the Microsoft channels. Absolutely, they do a fantastic job about that. Check it out, youtube.com/.net. There's video playlists about getting started with C#. Thindall is hinting at I'm republishing the series, the YouTube series, from way back for folks getting started, all about getting started with C#. My version is called C# in the Cards. There's a website out there, csharpinthecards.com. There's 9 episodes currently available. Each episode is 10 to 15 minutes, and they have notebooks associated with them. So you can download and tinker. All the samples are available. And what's key about that series is everything that you'll learn is related back to a deck of cards and playing card games. So it's something everybody can relate to, and everybody, regardless of your skill level, can take a look at and get started with. So thank you for the promo there, Thindall. I appreciate you calling that out. Crapteen is here on Twitch. It's complicated. Can we hold with .NET 8 until 2028, or fast forward to the next version of .NET? You can hold on to a version of .NET as long as you would like. It's a question of how long you'll have support from the Microsoft team. Since the source code for .NET is open source, you're welcome to download and recompile as much or as little as you would like for your ecosystem. However, once you do that, you've stepped outside the bounds of what the .NET team will support. So if you are interested in maintaining free support from Microsoft and the .NET team, you're not going to be able to get all the way to 2028. Middle of 2027 is about when the support will expire. The Microsoft free support will expire on that. On YouTube, C# Titan asks, thoughts on using gRPC to build microservices? It's a fantastic tool to use. gRPC, of course, uses HTTP2, uses protocol buffers, so you end up with a really small payload. Unlike typical OpenAPI that folks use, where it pushes JSON formatted content back and forth, right? JavaScript object notation format. JSON can be very verbose in how it describes and delivers data. Protocol buffers are very highly compressed, small. And that's even before you drop in some gzip compression or some Brotli compression. So having a minified data set and delivering that with HTTP2 means you can stream that data, means you can push a ton very, very quickly to gRPC configured clients. That said, the fastest server, according to the benchmarks that we saw over summer 2023, the fastest server and client you can get for gRPC is C# with ASP.NET. So absolutely check it out. There's some really, really cool stuff there that you can do with gRPC and .NET. Lanky Scottish Nerd's been addicted to Skull and Bones. I haven't gotten into it. I haven't. 60s here on YouTube. Sorry to be that guy. Not a problem. Think my noise suppression filter is also being applied to the music. No, it's not. It's on a separate channel. And it's just a little bit lower. I can turn that up. So it is purposely lower and in the background. So I can pull that back just a smidge. So let me see here. Great content, well done on the C# in the cards. Thank you. Dedicated on Twitch. How you doing there? You've been listening for a bit. You're wondering if this is currently an AMA or not. Yes, it is an AMA. It's an AMA for the next 27 minutes. There you go. Stay on framework. Well, don't do that. So .NET framework it ships as part of Windows. As long as there is a version of Windows, there will be a version of .NET framework that is supported on it. That's the way that Windows currently ships, and we service .NET framework. You can see that on the support details if you go to the .NET website, dot.net/support. You'll see information about the support duration for that. Here we go. Is it Abda Shafi on YouTube asks, as a WPF developer, is it possible for me to transition to Blazor? Sure, absolutely. Now, you're going to change markup, right? WPF is built with XAML. Blazor is built with HTML. You'll be able to lift, if you've used WPF, I'm assuming you've done a bit of code behind or a bit of MVVM, model view, view model architecture with your code. You'll be able to lift your view models and your models and reuse them directly in Blazor. Your views you're going to have to rewrite a little bit because you're changing from XAML to HTML and the Razor markup language. That said, it's not too far off. If you don't want to have to rewrite your XAML, you can take a look at products like the Uno platform or Avalonia, who do have support for XAML in their WebAssembly focused languages. You can bring that down with a little bit of tweaking and some work with their product. You can get your code working with minimal changes using those products. Now, those products are built and maintained by other companies in the .NET community. See, this is how you know it's live. Fritz is not always 100% here. But Avalonia and Uno platform are fantastic products. They support the .NET community. They invest in open source projects. They're fantastic folks. I encourage you to check out their websites for more if you want to learn how to use XAML directly in the browser. Blazor doesn't do that. Blazor, like I said, uses HTML. You're not crazy about the configuration first approach from gRPC? Configuration first is really something that's been a hallmark of how Microsoft does a bunch of our services, going all the way back to even SOAP services and WCF. Let me see here. The music is just low. Yeah, the idea is it's kind of in the background. So thank you, Surly Dev. Thindall says, regarding Blizzard, Thor had something depressing to say about the state of AAA studios and microtransactions. Apparently, Blizzard made as much money from StarCraft 2 as they did from a flaming horse skin in WoW. I don't have any insight into their business model. I work in developer division. Wouldn't surprise me. Wouldn't surprise me at all. And that says something, though, for us as software developers. That says something about how you can monetize and build an application and push it out to the internet and monetize and be successful. That's while that might be sad about the current state of gaming, that charging $50-$60 American for a game is something that folks aren't doing as much, and instead they're just happy spending the $5-$10 for a graphic that they can use in the game. That says something about an opportunity for all of us as software developers to take advantage of microtransactions. It's the way the economy is running right now in the 2020s, and is that something that is going to continue? Don't know. But we'll see. We'll see. It's an opportunity for us as developers. So, as a stopgap, you can have Blazor inside WPF. Yes. I wasn't planning on talking about that as part of this series, but I'll put a pin in that and right, and I'll consider that later on about Blazor Hybrid. So with WPF, with Windows Forms, there is a component you can use called a Blazor Web View that will host your Blazor application inside of a web view, a browser, whatever the native browser is for the operating system the application is being deployed to. WPF and Windows Forms, you're going to get Edge embedded in there, but it's not the current version of Edge. It's the version installed on the operating system you're referring to. So as Edge is updated on your client's operating system, it updates inside your application for you. Let me see here. There's always third-party libraries that have components. Yep. You're welcome, Abdishafi. Always happy to answer questions for folks here. Yeah, make your application free and add loot boxes. Could you imagine if Outlook.com had loot boxes? Hey, I'm working in Excel here, and you know what? There's a loot box that I'm going to open, and it's going to make my background shimmering gold. That'd be weird. That'd be weird. Not going to lie. Funny, but... but... Hang on. I'm in the middle of giving this PowerPoint presentation, but I need to pause for a second because I have to open a PowerPoint loot box. Will this content be available later in some platform? Asked Dassey. Yes, of course. This is being broadcast live on YouTube and Twitch. It's all recorded, and we will be available on youtube.com/dotnet. Everybody loves gambling. Not everybody. Not everybody. And even then, loot boxes are just like when you'd open a package of collectible trading cards, whether it's your favorite sport, baseball, football, and I mean both American football and International Association football, basketball, hockey, whatever it might be, your favorite trading card game, Pokemon, Magic the Gathering, what have you. So yeah, it's the same type of gambling. You know you're getting something. Is it high value or not? Give you a full game and all the mods for it in the community. I appreciate, Napalm, that I can buy some of the games that are out there. Get the game for free, and I can buy collections of the things that I want in the game for less than it would cost me to buy the entire game. I appreciate that I can launch Overwatch 2, and I can buy a starter kit of themes and skins for my favorite characters, and for $20-30 because I want to support those developers. I'm up and running and have some cool looks that support the developers and also make me stand out a little bit. So I'm okay with that. What was that about WCF again? Missed it. Hey there, Jazz Weather. How you doing on YouTube? You love it? Fantastic. Glad you're here, and we're going to get in and talk about Blazor, and I want to hear some of the folks in chat talk about it as we get into some of it. Continuing here, that's the thing, right? Nobody likes loot boxes. Disagree. I think there's a point of loot boxes, and I think there's a point of having a store where you can just say, give me that one thing. Pay to win is absolutely something that you see in games like Magic the Gathering Arena. You need to buy a lot in order to be able to be successful in there. Spam art and loot boxes? No, they are not. No. How am I... Jazz Weather on YouTube asks, how am I seeing adoption of Blazor in the industry? Here's the thing. I got to be careful what I say and what I don't say because I have NDAs with customers. And I'm going to generically say customers. There are a lot of customers out there using Blazor. A lot. Are they using Blazor on their internet-facing applications? Some. Is it millions and millions? No. We're still only 5 years into the Blazor experience here in the Blazor framework. It took 10 years for Angular to be an overnight success. It took 10 years for React to be a leading framework out there. And Blazor is something that's completely different because it uses the server or WebAssembly, and folks aren't there. There's a bit of confidence issues folks have around WebAssembly. Is this really a thing that's going to stick around? It's an HTML standard, yes, and we're seeing a bit of the slapback that's happening around Apple and their decisions to change their browser, to change the Safari browser on mobile devices in the EU. They're removing standard functionality from the browser. That's not being received well, and folks are investigating and pressing back about that. That's a thing. That's absolutely happening. If a major feature like WebAssembly, which is being used in more places than just the browser, were to be removed by an organization, you would definitely hear about it. So while there's concerns about it running in WebAssembly, there's a number of great models that you can use to run Blazor on the server, and it is being picked up more and more every day by customers, and they are using it, and there are applications, there are websites that you are using out there. I'm not allowed to disclose what they are. That's an NDA that customer has requested, that are using Blazor. So, but it is picking up. 60 asks, is WebView 2 any better than CSharp? From my experience, WebView is a bit slower and way harder to manage and impossible to mix with WPF elements. It's tricky to mix with WPF elements, to be sure. It is a little bit slower, yes. But I mean, you're migrating and running an application in a virtual machine inside of another application. So, yeah, it's going to be a little bit slower. It's not the panacea. It's not the ultimate amazing way to run applications. If you want to run an application for performance, build it natively. There is no discussion around that. Build it natively with your favorite stack, WinForms, WPF, .NET MAUI. You're going to have amazing performance building natively. But if you need to get your content running on those other platforms and you already have it in Blazor, it can be anywhere from minutes to a couple days to a couple weeks, and you've got the exact same application running natively on Windows, Mac, iOS, and Android. So lots of options there, and it's a question of trade-offs. You're never going to get the exact same best experience on every platform with one development stack. It's just not realistic, and we've seen that with Java for many, many years and how they attempted to have cross-platform user interfaces. Usama on YouTube asks, what is the best UI components package for Blazor? You're asking me to choose between some of my favorite children. I can't answer that because there's some really great packages out there. There's open source packages from folks like Mud Blazor. There's the Fluent UI for Blazor. There's commercial packages from folks like DevExpress and Progress Software, the Telerik UI for Blazor. Is it Meskia? I think the former component one has a great package of Blazor components. SyncFusion has a collection of Blazor components. There's great components out there from all these different folks. I'm not going to say one is better than the other, but I will say that they do see each other. They do actually talk to each other, these vendors and open source projects, and they do collaborate. Not collaborate's the wrong word. They do push each other, where one group will build component X. Well, the other, to keep up with them, the other vendors and the other frameworks will also build a component X. It's up to you to take a look and see which components and APIs feel the way that you think about building user interface, and deliver the features that you need. That said, full disclosure, I am a former Telerik employee, and I worked on their ASP.NET components more than 10 years ago. So I'm used to. I personally am used to the way that Telerik builds and delivers components, but they all do a fantastic job. I need to skip forward a little bit here. I see Thindall talking about modding. PowerPoint loot boxes, right? Opens hidden games inside Excel. I don't know about that. I don't know. Karthik, hello to you on YouTube. How you doing there, brother? Good to see you. Hiram Codes asks, do I recommend the use of Blazor eyes for mobile apps, or is it better to build .NET MAUI? I think I just covered that. It's not a bad idea to build with Blazor as a Blazor hybrid application if you just need to get compatibility and you need to ship and you've already got the Blazor components built. If you need performance, it's going to be better to go .NET MAUI. You are going to see a little bit of a slowdown. Whatever happened to Visual InterDev? Asks C# Titan. That was a great tool. Well, when little applications grow up, their voice changes, their body shape changes. They go through a little bit of change as they become a teenager, and they turn into bigger applications that have more features and are more robust. And you now have Visual Studio that Visual InterDev grew up into. Is Blazor becoming a good choice, or should I learn ASP.NET? MVC asks, is it Tamer on YouTube? That's it. That's going to feed your question. I love the question, Tamer. It feeds right into our first topics that we're going to discuss today. Blazor is where we, the .NET team, are going to recommend you start your development journey with ASP.NET. MVC is out there. It's going to continue to be supported. It's going to continue to get investments. But we think that Blazor is going to give a better, more productive developer experience. You can still use MVC and MVC controllers to build APIs. You can still use it to deliver views and user interfaces. There's an awesome tool set behind MVC and the capabilities there. We're moving folks to a Blazor first experience. So MVC Razor pages are out there. They're fantastic tools, and they will continue to be invested and supported. But you're going to see us move Blazor to the front of the line as the preferred framework for folks to use. No, HTML is not the problem. I see the trolling there on Twitch. I see it going by up here. Let me see here. Yes, we are talking about Blazor today, and there's definitely options to mix and match. Absolutely. How you doing there, Juan Carlos? Hello, welcome on YouTube. They are downright. The component vendors are downright friendly. Yeah, and it was when I first stepped into working in that bit of the ecosystem. It was strange for me to see that, because as somebody who worked at Telerik, talking to folks who were asking questions about what I was doing, what I was working on from Infragistics, I wasn't sure what I could say, what I could talk about, but because they're direct competitors. So you're welcome, Jazz Weather, for the reply. Jazz Weather continues, Blazor is super slick. People just haven't realized it. Can't wait to see Blazor become huge. I wrote a blog post. It's on my blog. It's also on DevTO. If you go to my blog, jeffreyfritz.com, you can also get there going to csharpfritz.com, just like my screen name. Jeffreyfritz.com. You'll see there's a blog post there about how I wrote the C# in the Cards website using Blazor, static server-side rendering, and WebAssembly. The website is really, really fast. Not the blog. The blog's slow. It's WordPress. But the C# in the Cards website, really fast. We're going to cover and talk about some of those features in this series, and we're going to get into server-side rendering today. Feels like Maui's getting a bit left on the side of the road, says Thindall, when it comes to what people talk about since Blazor Hybrid came out. I'll give you a little bit of that, sure. Maui is a wonderfully awesome technology on its own. Running Blazor inside of it is great, but you can use pure Maui, absolutely. Straight .NET Maui with XAML is going to get you as close to the metal as possible. Hello, Muhammad in New York City, talking to us on YouTube. How you doing there? Welcome in. Look at that. We got another East Coast friend here. Because I'm just outside Philadelphia. I'm in talks with some folks to potentially do something in New York City in the months ahead. We'll see. Web dev guy on Twitch says, I'm really enjoying Blazor. The more I get into it, there's an adjustment period coming from years of .NET back-end development with Angular on the front end. Totally agree. It is a little bit of a shift. Web dev guy continues, I've been having a blast with personal projects until I get comfortable enough to leverage it in my commercial life. I love hearing that. And I want to hear feedback from some of you out there who are using Blazor as we go through and discuss and show some of the lessons, because I want to get some of your real world feedback into the items that we're teaching and we're delivering here from Microsoft, because I want to make sure that they're valuable, not just to you, but to your colleagues who are learning and getting up to speed about Blazor. The folks at the next company down the hall at the business complex or across the street that are also writing software. I want to make sure that it's valuable to all of them. So I want to hear your feedback as we go along. And this is just an introduction stream today. We're just going to go through and talk about the new models and the new ways that components interact with each other. So we're not going to get too deep into that, but I absolutely want to hear your feedback, your comments as we go along there. 60 on YouTube says, I think the real problem with the web right now are the old standards. Why is JavaScript the main language for browsers? Shouldn't it be something low level like WebAssembly? We're just stuck with these standards. So 60, I hear you. I totally hear you. Here's the thing. There's millions of .NET developers. There's millions of Node developers out there. There's hundreds of thousands of Rust and Go developers out there, and choose another stack. Altogether, the development community is probably tens of millions of developers. There's tens of billions of websites out there. You can't just, as a browser, drop support for a feature that's been there for 30 years. It'd be great if we could and say, you know what, everybody's got to move to Foo. You can't. You just can't. Otherwise, those websites, those older pages, those things that are out there that a developer isn't actively maintaining, suddenly stop working. In which case, folks are going to stop using your browser that drops support for that feature, the blink tag, let's say, and they're going to go use the other browser that does still support the blink tag. So, I totally hear you. I do. But the backward compatible, non-maintained internet is why we need to have browsers that still support features from way back in the day. Not just that, but they've got all kinds of little hacks built into the browsers so that they support the weird way that major website in the top 100 X does, not specifically x.com, but some website does things in their application, and it looks weird in your browser compared to that browser over there. So the browser vendors manage, and sometimes they put patches in specific for websites. It's a terrible thing to think about. But what happened to Penn State Day? What do you mean? What I don't know. Napalm. Mike is here from Virginia Beach and talking to us on YouTube. How you doing there, Mike? Jazz Weather's also in New York City. Oh my gosh. And it would be great to have a .NET meetup in the area. Is New York .NET still doing its thing? If they are, I would love to come up and visit the user group and do something at the either the office there in Times Square. I don't know if there's still an office in Grand Central. There used to be one there. Big Daddy McCoy on Twitch. I'm porting my older project to Blazor. I'm stuck on something Googled and ChatGPT to death. Where does one find help next? Hi. We have a Discord for my Twitch channel and YouTube. There's a link on my Twitch channel. If one of the other folks that is in my Discord, if you want to share that link on Twitch for Big Daddy McCoy, much appreciate. There's a group of folks there that can dig in and help you with that, and take a look. I would ask on Stack Overflow. I would ask on Microsoft Tech Community to try and get you in that direction, get you successful. So we've got 2 minutes left in our AMA segment here, and then we're going to dive into the templates and talk about what's new in Blazor here. Let me see if I can quickly go through some of this. Rykix is here on YouTube from France. Love Blazor, but regret that the new render mode and auth changes made was not really well explained. Absolutely. I love that you just said that, Rykix, and that's why we're doing this series. It's coming. We're going to talk more about it. And it's definitely a pain point that the .NET team, my team, has heard, and we want to improve, and we want to have more of these AMAs and interactions for folks. Thank you, Thindall, with the link to the Discord. Much appreciated. Let me see here. Matuz on YouTube got first job as a graduate C# developer. Awesome. What's my must learn for a C# and .NET developer for those kinds of roles? What's the must learn? Get into gRPC. Get into ASP.NET Core. Take a look at Blazor like we are today. They'll get you, those technologies will get you to a lot of different places. Start looking at Semantic Kernel. Semantic Kernel is a fantastic library and tool that will help you bring artificial intelligence into your applications. Integrate with ChatGPT, integrate with Azure OpenAI, and do some pretty amazing things. I'm scrolling through. I'm trying the rest of the questions here, trying to get to through and answer folks as much as possible. Any insight into the efforts to use C# to manipulate the DOM as well? Not happening. There's a great bridge to manipulate the DOM with JavaScript. You can do that easily, I'll say. It's possible. If not natively supporting it, yeah, WebAssembly isn't natively supporting it, so C# can't do that either. Perhaps the C# library wrapping the JavaScript runtime. That's exactly what folks do. Yup. Thank you, Johnny Picat. Appreciate the kind words. That's very nice. Great to hear that. Awesome, Rykix. Glad to hear that. Just starting out learning .NET and C#. Where should I start? It says, is it Spirit Life or Sprite Life? Lots of places. .net/learn, dot.net, and click the Learn button up at the top. There's all kinds of tutorials from the .NET team there about C#, about the various frameworks and technologies that you can get into with .NET. And I want to make sure that folks understand that are getting started in it that C# is just a programming language, and .NET is a whole ecosystem of programming languages, tools, frameworks, debuggers that will help you build applications faster and more productively. That's a weird word to say. So whether you're building an application that's going to run on a Raspberry Pi, right? There's the Pi. You're going to write an application that runs on a VR device. Or you're going to run something that runs in the massive cloud. .NET's got you covered. One programming stack and it just works everywhere. That's why I love it, and I've been doing it for decades. It's put food on my table. It's put my kid through college. It's great stuff. All right, I need to move. It does run in a teeny tiny cloud. It also runs in a massive, gigantic cloud as well. Let's get into this. Let's talk about Blazor. Let's talk about all the things that you can do with Blazor, what Blazor is, and what makes it interesting and compelling for us as web developers. I'm not just going to say .NET developers, but web developers, because it doesn't matter what stack you're using right now. You can integrate and use Blazor. It's really great stuff. And I fully expect that we might get through this series and transition right into an Aspire series in the June timeframe, where you're going to learn that Aspire is a framework that doesn't matter what type of application you're building, doesn't matter what type of language stack you're using, you want .NET Aspire. More on that as it gets closer to release and we prepare for that video series. Yep, actual practical Aspire. And right now, we're a little bit short of practical because, quite frankly, it's not done being built. They're still working on it. There's some great things you can do with it, but it's still being built. Let's head over. I'm going to be using both Visual Studio and Visual Studio Code today. Why? Because I'm on Windows, and I want to make sure that you understand and you appreciate that you can use the tools, the features we're going to talk about on every operating system. Well, on every Linux, Mac OS, and Windows. Of course, there's support for developers on all three of those, and that pretty much covers everybody. So, and don't give me no Commodore 64. I know you're about to type it there. You deliver it, it runs on Tizen, to be sure. But don't give me any of that Commodore 64 operating system stuff. So, all right, let's do this. Let me head over to Visual Studio, and we can get in and start writing some code and have a good time with this. No, not DOS. Oh, darn it, Todd. ZX Spectrum. There you go. So I'm here in Visual Studio. Let's talk about and build our first Blazor application, and take a look at what that is, what it looks like. Now, when you want to build with Blazor, if I search through the templates, right, here's my list of recent templates that I've been using over here. But if I were to search for Blazor, there's a bunch of different templates that are available to me here. What the heck are all of these? Don't worry about it. Don't look at those things over there. Get into Blazor Web App. Okay, Blazor Web Application is where folks can start, and there's a bunch of options here that will control how you build and where your application runs to start. So let's call this, right, my first Blazor app, and I'm going to put this in my dev folder. Solution, sure. Place the solution and project in the same. That's fine. And now I've got a series of options that I can go through. If you're working at the command line, there is a .NET New template that you can use that will give you the same options as command line switches. You, of course, want to build with .NET 8. It's the only version of the framework that supports these capabilities that we're going to go through. Do you want to turn on authentication or not? For right now, I'm going to leave it turned off. You should always start with HTTPS. Modern applications, as of the 2020s and later, you should be using Secure Socket Layer. HTTPS, call it Transport Layer Security, call it SSL. It's fine. It's the same thing. You should be using that to mitigate man-in-the-middle attacks, those types of things. This is Visual Studio 2022 that I'm using to show you how to build a new application. We'll also build in at the command line on a second pass through here. Okay, I'm going to leave interactive render mode turned off. Yeah, that's fine. Sample pages, we're going to include those, and we're not going to talk about Aspire yet. We're going to get into that. How you doing there, H for Games? Hello. Let me see. Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to move my tabs up to the top because that's where folks kind of expect to see them. I do like it down the right side here because I have a wide screen, but know that you can move those around. An overview about ASP.NET Core. Fritz, I'm not using ASP.NET Core. Blazor is a user interface framework that runs on top of the general web development framework that is ASP.NET Core. So Yes, all this stuff that we're going to be doing today, you can do on VS Code on Windows, Mac, and Linux. So I happen to be on Windows today. I will show VS Code in the second demo that we go through here. Why are they called class on class? Why? What? I don't know what you're talking about. I'm sorry. So I have a Solution Explorer. It kind of looks like the File Explorer that you see out there. It's got a series of various things in here, including a www root folder. There's properties of the project, which really says, how do I start this website? Dependencies, what other frameworks, what projects, what libraries am I referencing? Are there services that we're connected to and that we've built clients to interact with? We're not going to touch on that too much. Dependencies in this series, we're going to build some dependencies and interact with them. You'll see that. The www root folder is where all the static content for your website comes from. So when you're building a Blazor website, when you're building an ASP.NET website, all the static things, your CSS, your images, your fonts, your JavaScript files, they all live in this www root folder. And the contents of those are accessible right off the root of the website. ASP.NET mounts those contents directly so that you can request them directly. Okay. Program CS is where ASP.NET defines how the website is configured, how services are added and referenced, and how the HTTP requests are processed. We'll talk more about what that is and how that is handled in a later stream. This is what it does. You can take a look at see what some of these things are. Importantly in here, add Razor components is what's telling the website, the web framework, hey, this is the content that the user interface framework we're going to use. Razor components, okay? That's Blazor is what that is. And down here at the bottom, we're going to map those Razor components. We're going to hand off control so that those components can launch and manage and deliver content to our visitors to our website. And we're going to provide an entry point here called app. What the heck is app? On YouTube, Ken says the jump from old Blazor in .NET 6 and 7 to the new Blazor is something I cannot comprehend completely. And that's why we're doing this series, Ken. Yep. You just started to learn Blazor just before .NET 8 was released. Here we go. I'm going to help you with that through this series, okay? So it's mapping a component called app. Well, if I open the components folder here, we'll check it out. There's app.razor. So Razor components, and it's app.razor. That's a Razor component, okay? Razor components have a .razor extension. They're interactive. They render HTML content and then listen for interactions with that content. So if we take a look at app.razor, Fritz, I thought you told me that this is a component. This is right. That looks like HTML. Exactly. The Razor component, the Razor templating language, is HTML-like. You can use HTML tags all as much as you want throughout your Razor components and application. This is the entry point. So just like you might see in a single page application that you would build with Angular, Vue, or React, where you have some sort of a template page that your content gets loaded into. This is the base HTML page that's going to boot up our application. It's going to start up and hand off control to Blazor, like you see right here on line 17, where it uses JavaScript to hand off interactions and start the Blazor experience. Let me back up just 1 second. On YouTube, Juan says the builder can be nullable. Here, no, the builder, what it returns is, right, it's looking at that and saying, well, create builder could return something that might be null. It's never going to be null. It uses a var here. So for protection, it says, well, it could be null, but it's never null. It's never returned as null. Marcus, we're going to get into that. We're going to get into that in today's stream. So AppRaiser is right. This is the outer shell, the outer framework of our Blazor application. Yes, Hiram on YouTube. You see, we added style sheets here. If you want to add other style sheets, right, the default template adds Bootstrap to this. If you want to use another CSS framework, you want to use Tailwind, you want to use something else, totally, go for it. Add your own custom style sheets in here. You see there's an app.css file that's referenced here, and it's right there in the www root folder. I can open that and see some basic CSS that's been customized and written for this application. Okay. You can add other JavaScript as you'd like. Typically, right, we like to have our JavaScript in the footer, at the bottom of the body element. So we've got an initial script here to start up the Blazor framework, but you can add other scripts there as well. If you wanted to add jQuery. Who still adds jQuery to their application? And other frameworks, you can do that. You can hand them off because Blazor integrates and plays very nicely with all kinds of JavaScript frameworks and tools. So now there's a couple things here, Fritz, that I'm looking at, and that's not HTML. Head outlet and routes. Those aren't HTML, are they? These two are Blazor components. The head outlet is where any other component that we launch and run with Blazor can push content into. So instead of doing some sort of document dot get element by tag name head, and then do an append HTML and injecting content into the head, you can put content directly into the header with a special head content tag or a page title tag on other Blazor pages. And routes, well, just like in Angular and React and Vue, we have a router that decides how to deliver content and inject it into the page. So this hands off to the router. And I can click F12 there on my keyboard, and it navigates to routes.razor. You see it there above me. And the router, by default, and most folks don't have to change this at all, by default, when it finds a location that's been requested, it's going to route to that view and display that content. And then it's going to focus. It's going to take the focus of the browser and put it on the first H1 tag on the page. That's kind of nice to have for accessibility, to scroll and make that the first tag. It also defines that we're going to use a default layout by default throughout our application called main layout. What's main layout? So it won't let me F12 into that. Main layout is here in the layout folder, main layout. And this is used just inside AppRaiser when the routes are painted. So it's going to find whatever page was requested. It's going to put this layout in. It's going to inject that in by default. And you see it's a page with a sidebar element up here with something called nav menu. You can see that's that teal color. That indicates that it's a component. But then I've got a main tag here with an about, and then an article. We know what those are, and we see some Bootstrap CSS there. Those are cool. And then body. This is a command, and it specifies, here's the content. Here's where we're going to inject the content of a page. Pavel, let me come back to your question in just a minute. So I can inject content right there. So I have pages, and they're here by convention in this pages folder. It's really small on screen, my apologies. The home page is the default page that will load, and it looks like HTML because it is. It's just a fragment of HTML that's going to get loaded into the middle of this body element, right? So, right, it's going to, when we request the home page, it's going to render content that looks like that. Okay, that's kind of easy to understand. How does it know to choose that page? Well, the home page has a directive at the top that says, this is the page ASP.NET that I'm listening to. I'm listening to / the root, the default page in my application. Okay? And I mentioned about the head outlet. Well, here we specify the page title with a little page title tag. It's going to take that text home and inject it into the title of my web page. So let's start this and take a look and see what this looks like. How long will the stream be? I mean, are we going to cover and use all the render modes? Yeah, we are. We're going to go till about 11 a.m. Eastern, about another 45 minutes. But every week for the next 8 weeks, we're going to go through and talk more about all the cool things that you can do with Blazor and answer your questions and do that discussion-focused interaction, learning about Blazor together. So, there you go. So, right, my page here said, hello world, welcome to your new app. Hello world, welcome to your new app. And my main layout that we had, right, that was wrapping it. So there's a sidebar with a navigation menu. There's my sidebar. And across the top, there's an anchor for the about page. There's my anchor for the about page, right? And my article with that body content in the middle. Let's take a look at what nav menu is, just so you have an idea what's over there. So there's the logo in the top left corner, my first Blazor app. It generates and puts the same name that I gave to my project by default in the top corner there. And then a series of navigation links underneath of it for home and weather. All right. Well, I'm on the home page here. I can click into weather, and that was kind of cool. It loaded and painted data here on the screen. Now, this is showing how you can load and deliver data with a static server rendered application. Okay? Let me answer some questions here about some of the things going on and get caught up before I dig into what this is and how this works, because some folks are asking questions that are going to lead into this. On YouTube, Pavel asks, Blazor server versus Blazor WebAssembly. Why not both? In the new Blazor world, you can static render things like this is being done here, even though it looks like it's interactive and it's waiting and then loading content. It's actually static rendered. But server, WebAssembly, there's options there that we're going to get into throughout the series that show why not a little bit of both. And you have that option now with .NET 8. That's something that's going to be very important for us to show and learn. You can choose where you want your Blazor application to run. More on that as we get through the demos in today's session. If it has an @ page, it's a page. No. So this is nav menu. This is a component. You can't navigate to nav menu. That isn't a thing. There's nothing there. Home has @ page. It's a component, but it's a component that listens at that location. Okay? So if I go to the weather page, we saw /weather. There's weather. There it is. This is a component, but it also listens at this location. Wait, it's a component. What do you mean? Nav menu was a component. We saw that it's referenced with a tag that's the same name as the file, right? Nav menu loads navmenu.razor. So check this out. I can go over to here to home, and I can type weather. Save that. Go back to the home page, and it put the weather page inside my home page. It's a component. I can do that if I want and be really obnoxious. because it's a component. And components look like tags that we can reuse wherever you want. So you're correct to a point, Thindoll, but I want to make sure that folks know pages are also components and they have the exact same syntax. That's very powerful to understand. So you can take something that's a page and embed it inside of another page, right? We did something like this yesterday on my other stream on Twitch and YouTube, where we had a page and we wanted to turn it into a modal dialogue. So we just moved it and referenced that page as a tag and removed the page directive at the top. And now it's a component. Really cool stuff. Spirit Life asks, is this part Blazor specific or is this a part of .NET? This is Blazor specific. There's things that you see me do inside the editor with Razor. These things are Blazor specific. Okay. So, and you see it does. We have hot reload embedded in Visual Studio. You can also run it at the command line, and it automatically refreshes the browser. John O'Sullivan on YouTube needs to rewrite a web forms app to comply with content security policies that doesn't allow unsafe inline and unsafe eval. Does Blazor still require those settings in content security policy? Nope. Does not require those. Regathian, what do I do when I'm in the middle of rendering a component and decide I changed my mind and want to respond with a 404? There is there's an entry you can put in Program CS to tell it how to respond with a 404, what you want it to render, what you want it to deliver. We covered that in a Blazor Puzzle episode. I'm also involved in a podcast called Blazor Puzzle. It's an entry in Program CS that you can tell it how to respond with a 404 with a file not found error. Yeah. Spirit Life asks, what does Blazor do that .NET doesn't? Blazor renders and delivers websites and web content. You can embed that inside of a native application using the Blazor web view. That makes it into what we call a Blazor hybrid application. .NET allows you to build all kinds of microservices, console applications, native applications that run on Windows, Mac, iOS, and Android without having to touch web technology at all. Let me see here. I'm scrolling through trying to get quickly back to our demo here. Haram Codes on YouTube says, so we create components and inject to our app as we need it, just like Angular React. Exactly, right? It's very concept compatible with those frameworks. You create components and you pass them around in your application. You're welcome, John, on YouTube. Bullseye on Twitch asks, Blazor uses C# to get stuff done instead of JavaScript, right? Yes. Let's talk about that. Let's look at that weather demo because it looks interactive there and it's loading data from somewhere to present on screen. How does that work? Let's talk about this. Let me show you what's going on here because this is just an HTML table. Right? If I view source, you can see there's my HTML table. And if you've been a web developer for any amount of time, you know how to build an HTML table. A long time ago, I was interviewing developers for a job at a .com startup company. We were interviewing people, and there were people who came in the door that didn't know how to write an HTML table. I'm like, what did you think you were going to be doing as a web developer at a .com company? Like, come on. Can you use your own HTML elements? Sure can. Yes, indeed. So let me dig under the surface here and show you the weather page. Now, it's got this thing here. Don't know what that is yet. Continuing, look at this. We've got these weird @ signs and some code embedded here. This is where C# is a little bit like PHP and some other HTML templating languages. The Razor templating language embeds C# with your HTML tags. So this means that the templating language knows and understands C#, and it also understands when tags start and stop. So you can jump right into HTML from code without having to write anything extra. You have to signal to the templating language that you're starting to write some C# by putting an @ sign in front. I want to write a simple if statement. Well, if forecast is null, if it's equal to null, we're going to put a little loading message up there. And you see that when this page loads, right? We get a little loading message. It goes away when we do get content, and it renders that table. And you see it's doing a for each across that forecast collection. I mouse over that, and Visual Studio shows me this is an array of weather forecasts. We're in C# at this point. And we're going to output for each weather forecast object, the date, the temperature in Celsius, the temperature in freedom units. Yeah, that's right, I called Fahrenheit freedom units because we Americans are the only ones that use it. Sorry. And then some summary. Well, where does all this come from? Check it out. If you're familiar with React, just like in React, you can embed your code right next to your markup. So, at code, this tells Razor that, hey, here's a little bit of C# code that we're going to work with. And when the page is initialized, we put a little delay in here to simulate loading data from somewhere else. We're going to take a collection of various weather summaries, and we're going to create some random fake weather data. And there's a class that defines what a weather forecast is, okay? So we're just going to randomly create some fake data, right? So we're going to create 5 records, and we're going to select, we're going to create a new weather forecast, right? This is link. This is a C# feature, and we're using it here in Blazor. And we're going to take that array of content that it creates, you see randomly creates, and we're going to assign it to this forecasts variable. And that forecasts, it's a field here. We're going to make that available. So as that's available, it will paint and fill this in. Now this is a static server rendered website. So when I control F5, I get that little loading blip there. And when I look at the source code, it shows me my HTML. It doesn't show me that loading thing. Well, what's going on there? This is static render, and it's got a little bit of streaming rendering in it. So that, think about in your web applications, you might request some data from a database. You might request some data from a microservice, or you're loading something off of disk to inspect. Maybe it's a CSV file, right? Maybe you're loading a JSON file that's got some configuration in it. I don't know. And you want to paint content on screen. You want to generate a table maybe, or set specific configuration options based on the content of that file or what you fetch from that external database or microservice. When you do those operations, there might be a delay in when it returns. And you see a lot of folks, a lot of websites, like the website you're watching this video on, that when you browse to and you want to watch a video, by default, it puts up a little gray gradient square. This is what they do in 2024 on YouTube and Twitch. It puts up a little gray gradient square, and it animates slightly as it's waiting for data to load, waiting for JavaScript to render, waiting for the CSS and all the code that's going to present that video to finish running in your browser and start receiving those first bits of the video image that you want to watch. That's a lot of work to write all that stuff. That's a lot of work. That's built into C# and Blazor. Check it out. C# has this concept of asynchronous interactions. So we can await other tasks. We're just sleeping for a half a second here, for 500 milliseconds. But that could be await get data from the database, make this request from the microservice, and when that's done, put it into the forecast collection. This block down here takes tens of milliseconds. Well, while this is going on, we can present and show other content on screen, and that's what's going on up here. We haven't loaded the forecast yet because it's still loading. So if I take that 500 and let's make it 5 seconds instead of 500 milliseconds, while it's null, we're going to get just a little block of text here. You can put whatever you'd like there. You want to put a little animation. You want to put the yellow under construction sign from the web in the 1990s there with the fella digging. Go for it. You can put whatever you want there. You want to put a progress bar? Be my guest. It's up to you what you put there, and it will automatically render this content in the other half once the forecast is populated. So if I refresh that, now it's just sitting there for 5 seconds, and you still see that loading. So if it's an animation, if it's a gradient that's being animated, if it's an image, if it's an animated GIF, whatever it is, that's easy for us as developers to build. Now, it's static rendered on the server. The stream rendering here, this is our first bit of Blazor rendering that we're going to talk about. You can, by adding this, it's telling Blazor something else is going on here. Render as much as you can up front, and if anything changes at the conclusion of our events on this page, go update the request with that content. And all of that happens and paints and updates for you. You don't have to write any of that plumbing. You don't have to write any of those HTTP fetch requests. All of that is built in for you. I get to focus on what I do best, generating user interface and making requests from my data services to paint on the screens. Todd on Twitch, I agree with you. Those types of, the under construction signs and the waiting things, it's a GeoCities flashback. Yes, right? So you have lots of options here for what you want to do to deliver this. Juan Carlos on YouTube asks, is it like lazy rendering? It's exactly like lazy rendering. Lazy rendering. That's how you can tell we're live, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah. So that static server rendering delivers HTML quickly into the browser, and you get this content. Daniel on YouTube says the term static server rendering confused Daniel for a long time because they always associated static with meaning content that's served without any rendering, like a raw HTML page. Yes. So, So Blazor gives you that ability. When we look at the homepage, there is no interactivity here. I'm just generating some HTML and painting it there. But as an ASP.NET developer, I can write that HTML and deliver it directly, and it renders and delivers, and I don't need to light up those interactive components. When I need that power, I can reach into my bag of Blazor tricks and start adding it in and mixing it in. I don't need to build a completely different website. I don't need to go and bring in a bunch of JavaScript libraries or CSS frameworks. It's already there, and it doesn't deliver it unless you need it. That's some powerful stuff, right? Daniel says it made much more sense to me to think of static server rendering as non-interactive server rendering. Yeah, I'm game with that. Yeah, makes perfect sense. Yes, indeed. Disco Stuff asks, can I tell how to deploy a Blazor app behind traffic in a Docker container? Sure. Build your Docker. You can build a Docker container with Blazor very easily. The easiest way to do it, if you have Visual Studio, the easiest way to do it is to right-click on your application, add Docker support. Which target operating system you want to hit? Yeah, let's hit Linux. Container build type. Do you want to build a Docker file, or do you want to use the .NET SDK? Give me a Docker file, because I have a feeling that's what you're interested in. And it generates the appropriate Docker file for you. You want to have it run behind traffic? Fine. Set up your traffic, your traffic reverse proxy to point to this instead. You're golden. You're golden. Now, I also want to make sure that I show you what happens with the other style of this, right? So if I go back in here, I'm going to right click, and I want to make sure that you're aware of this. I'll add Docker support. Target Linux, but let it run with the .NET SDK. It doesn't add a Docker file because you don't need a Docker file, because it adds the configuration for Docker inside our project. Our project file inside ASP.NET, inside a Blazor application, it's an XML document. It's compatible with all the other versions of .NET, so you can build and compile with the same compile tools, applications that go back for 20 years, and it is going to be compatible going forward as well. But all the information is here. You can, at the command line, execute .NET publish, and you can specify you want it to run in a container, and it will build and deliver. The web server ships as part of this. So, oh my gosh, Disco staff, great questions. Let me step out and show you that just a second here. So I built, and this application is running here with a debugger inside of Visual Studio. I'm going to remove the Docker things that were added here. I'm going to remove that. I don't want the container targets, and I'm going to remove the configuration for that. So I can take this project. Let me do this in the next demo. You can run this at the command line. Nope, don't need Nginx. Nope. Have a good one, Thindoll. Thanks for sticking around. Luis, you've been using Blazor and Radzen exclusively for the last year. Radzen's a great vendor that builds components. Yes. So this is all static server rendered. When you want to start interacting and doing things like buttons, or I'm not going to say forms, but you want to do things like buttons that you click on and things happen, you need to start making it interactive. So let's open a browser here. And not a browser, a command line. Let me see. I'm going to copy the path to that, and I'm going to go to that folder location. This is Windows Terminal. So let's create a new Blazor application. So at the command line, if you're on Windows, Mac or Linux, you can execute .NET, D-O-T-N-E-T at the command line. And there's tons of templates in here that you can use. And we're going to use a Blazor web app application right here. So I can use the template name Blazor to build a new application. So let's clear that and say .NET new Blazor. Tell me a little bit more about the options I have. And there's all kinds of command line options. So I'm going to make this first one interactive on the server. Okay. So let's do that. .NET new Blazor. I want it to output into my server app. And it's INT, and I'd like it to be server interactive. And it's scrolled off the bottom there of the screen. There you go. Now you can see it. So it just built and deployed that into a folder called My Server. There it is, My Server app. Let me add it to the solution. So .NET SLN add. You can't see that. You can't see that. Let's do this. There we go. Now you can see. .NET SLN, it's right up there. Add, and I'm going to add My Server app to the solution. The solution is a grouping of projects in .NET. So we've now added that to the solution. And for my friends that are working in... Come here, you. That's my Docker containers that are running in the background. For my folks that are running in Visual Studio, there's My Server app. I just added it to the solution, and it's available down here. But you might be working with Visual Studio Code. Let's open Visual Studio Code and go through this exact same experience and do this here. And to Disco Stoff, let me make sure I pronounce your name right. To your question, so here's my server application. And just like we saw with the static application, that's building and doing things down there. I've got pages, I've got my app, I've got program down here, but this is going to run interactively on the server. So instead of just adding Razor components, now we're adding interactive server components. And we're not just mapping Razor components like app, but we're adding interactive server render mode. This is going to mean that our web server is going to start listening for interactions from the browser, from folks who are attached in the browser. So let's actually run that application. And to the question of, I don't need a web server, that's right. The web server for ASP.NET, it's built in at the command line. So as a developer, I can just execute .NET run. And it will restore packages, right? npm I, right? It will build my application and start a web server and listen for us right there. Let me bring that over onto the screen. And this is a server interactive website, and it looks just like the old one that we had. If I go back to VS Code and we look at pages, there's my home page. And it's the exact same code that we had for the static render, because your Blazor content is portable. It will render and run in many different modes on many different locations. We'll see more about that. So my weather page still has this streaming rendering bit here, and it still has all the content to render my forecast, and it's still doing that funny delay to load and paint data on the screen. So if I go to weather, it renders and presents that on screen. But there's also a counter page here. And this is an interactive page because I can click the button and it's going to increment that counter. Big deal, Fritz. I can do that with JavaScript, right? That's an on-click handler on this button. And I'm just going to take that text block where that count is, and I'm just going to increment it to count +1. You're right. Big deal. But it's happening interactively on the server. There's no code being delivered and running in the browser. Check this out. Let me show you. The counter has page title, has an H1. We saw the H1. Current count. And then when we talked about Razor earlier, we know that putting an @ sign in front of something pivots and puts that into C#. So we're put a C# variable called current count here. Here's our code block, just like we saw before. And there's our field, current count. And it's initialized to the value 0. Our button here, yeah, see, just like you thought, right? You have a little bit of JavaScript on an on-click handler that's going to increment the count, and it's just going to take that current count and increment it by 1, right? That's nothing. We're used to seeing that. Wait. That on-click has an @ sign in front of it. That means it's C#. It's not JavaScript. So increment count, this is a C# method here. And this is going to run on the server. So if we go back over here and we look at the code that's on the page, right? It actually does a little bit of network interaction. Right? Not images. Show me the WebSockets. It's going to connect with WebSockets. And it's doing all the logic on the server. It starts what we call a circuit, and you can see it here just above me. All right, let me expand that so it's a little bit easier to see. And it's doing some Blazor work internally on the server and some other things. It's going to attach a component, and it's going to render the components on screen, and it's passing all of these little messages back and forth. And as I click, let me clear out the list of messages. It sends a message to the server, hey, dispatch an event. And it says, oh, we're going to render something. We're going to end invoking and on render completed. But here, what it's saying to send back, look, it's all compressed in there, right? But you can see it's passing back, we're going to render a 1, right? Close that up. So as I click this, you see it's rendering and delivering new content. And I'm only at 160 bytes per message that it's sending back and forth. So you can have really powerful web servers that do very complex calculations, right? Things that you want to protect, how those calculations, how those interactions occur. It's important for you to have them run somewhere that's validated, that your customers can't interact with. You can have it run on the server and deliver it and run in the browser. And importantly, you wrote the same code that you could have written that runs statically on the server, but because it has that interactive server render mode, it's going to run on the server. Now, if I take that out and I say, this page isn't rendering on the server, and I restart my website, right? So there's my website running. I'm trying to cancel you. Why won't you cancel? Thank you. Come on. Let's go. There we go. It stopped. And I'll rerun it. So .NET Run again will rebuild and run it, right? And you can do all this at the command line on Windows, Mac, and Linux. So there it is. It's running again. And now I'm connected. Yes, I know. Go ahead and reload the page. And when I jump over to that counter page, it renders the exact same way that I'm used to, because it's just HTML and content, and I've got a little bit of code down here. Because I don't have this tagged with interactive server, it doesn't know what to do when I click on this. That interactive server says there's other things, there's other events on this page that are going to be interacted with that Blazor needs to listen for. So if I go back here, I'll shut that down. And this time, let me run this with .NET Watch, and I'm going to put the interactive server back in there. And I'll let it run. Now, Watch, .NET Watch says, build this application and watch for changes. And if there are any changes, patch it automatically in the browser. So there's my counter page, and you see it's connected with WebAssembly to Blazor. Now it's listening. Now it's going to be able to respond to that. And because I'm using .NET Watch, you can do this on your own applications. I can change the content here to say something different, and it will automatically hot reload that for you. Great possibility, great options for you as a developer to be able to build and change the way things look without having to reload any of your application, right? Let's make the color blue, text decoration, underline, and there it is. Before I could even Alt-Tab over to it, it was already updated and running out there, all right? So that's server interactivity. Let me catch up on some of the messages there in chat. On YouTube, Louise says, coming from a back-end background, specifically with Web API, I still have trouble with await async in Blazor. We'll cover more of that later in the series. Disco Staff says, building the app is really easy, but nobody shows you actually how to put this in production. Everybody is showcasing local host only. We're going to get into production. The easiest way to set something up to run in production, check this out. It's called publish. So I can execute a command called publish, and I can specify a folder to write it out to. So publish it to the dist folder. Done. So if I go into the dist folder and we take a look at the contents in here, I'll open it up in Explorer so it's a little bit easier to see. So I have a DLL, a series of file here, and I have an exe that it's going to run, right? And I've got my www root here that has my CSS, my images, my Bootstrap library. All you have to do is copy this out to a web server location and tell it to start web server, and it will run. There's deployment scripts available for folks on GitHub Actions, on Azure DevOps that will build and deploy that to AWS, to Azure, to Google Cloud. If you put it in, you can also put it into a container, and it'll take all that content that I just generated and give you a container that contains that stuff. If you want to see a real application that we're building live on stream and adding features to and delivering and deploying containers, check out my other streams that I run on the CSharpFritz channel, both on YouTube and Twitch. This same time, on Tuesdays and Thursdays, we're building an application called Tags App. Complete source code, deployment scripts, everything is open source. You can download, interact with it, tinker with it. That is on GitHub. Let me share the link for that source code. Everything to deploy is built in there. It is a live application. We use that application live in production, on screen for .NET Conf, with hundreds of thousands of viewers interacting with that application live on video. We'll do more with that. We'll have a lot of fun with that, and we can talk more about that whenever you'd like. As a React TypeScript developer trying to get your head around what Blazor can do, would you say it is comparable to React in any way? Yeah, it's comparable to React, sure. I'm going to get into and show you the next thing that it can do that's really crazy here in just a second. Luis says, auth was also a pain in the beginning. Totally, that's coming up later. We're going to get into it. You can do some pretty robust stuff there. Yes, indeed. In a local environment, my container works in a production environment. It can't find the static files anymore. Path is wrong for some reason. I'm not sure what you're talking about. Why are they called class on class? Wonder why Blueprint is named a class. Did some research and found out more than 60 years ago. Yes. That's object-oriented. They call an object a class. And other programming languages call them blueprints. It's Java, C++, C#, JavaScript, TypeScript. They call them classes. What's the Blazor JS file that gets downloaded with the page? So when you're in static render mode, static server render mode, it actually does a diff on the content that you click and request, and it patches. Let's take a look at that. I'll go into my first. So this is the static rendered one. This patches the user interface so that you're not actually clicking in and navigating anywhere, right? The browser doesn't flash when you click between these. It's patching the content that's on the page and updating the location so that you get a very fast rendering static site that uses very little processor. Because in addition to building this content, you can put output caching on this so that it renders, saves that content, and doesn't come back to it. Just pulls it out of memory and serves it. More about that in other sessions. You can read my blog post about building and delivering these websites very, very quickly on jeffreyfritz.com. But Blazor.js is managing that traffic. Since it's running on the server, does this help to keep variables, especially any needed environment variables, safer and ensure they aren't found when someone looks at the source code? Yes, Bullseye, exactly. So let me go back to the server interactive mode. So I'll go up one and go to, right, it was that one. And I will .NET watch that, right? So I can pass in environment variables as configuration. All of the code to run that, to run this, is sitting on the server, right? So, right, private string super secret stuff here equals, this is a secret. And go back over here. When I go to the counter page and we look at the source code, that stuff isn't anywhere on the page. It's never rendered. It's never delivered. It's hidden because it all runs on the server. Just like you were talking about there. That's right, Bullseye. Thank you for your help, Luis. Appreciate that. Haram says Blazor and C# code on the same place can be confusing at the beginning. Totally agree. There's an option for you for that. So when we look at this, having HTML and C# on the same page, it does feel a little confusing. React folks are used to seeing this type of thing, and they feel okay about that. However, there's always a feeling of, I like the separation of concerns, and I want this code in a place that's appropriate for C# code. So here's what you can do. And this works for all of Blazor. So I'm going to open that pages. I'm going to create a new file here, and I'm going to call this counter.razor.cs. And I'm not going to ask Copilot Chat to do something. No. I'm going to create a namespace, give it the right namespace there. Yeah, actually, public partial class counter, and I just have the exact same code that's there. I can move that and put it over here. No, I want it as a file scope namespace. Thank you. There we go. So I've got my, oh, come on. Format that code. Yeah, format document. Shift-Alt-F. That's what I thought I did. So it's called counter because it matches my counter.razor. I brought over the field. I brought over the increment count. And that will work on the page. And it's pulling it from this class file. So now my content that's over here, my markup, is just markup. I've got about 5 minutes left in our time together. Yeah, hang on. Go ahead, restart. Sure. Because there's a new file there. And it still works. It's refreshed. I'll even refresh the page. It still works. And we've been able to separate and put the content in different places. Folks will ask, well, how do you know when to break those up? What's a good place to do that? I look at the amount of concepts that are in the markup and that are in the code. If there's too much of markup or too much code, separate it. Break it down. Put it in two different places so that I can very clearly tab between, here's my code, here's my markup. I also look at the number of page downs that I have on a file. If I need to hit page down more than twice to see all the content of the page, it's probably too much and it's time to consider breaking that up. And I need to listen to my own recommendation on that and do more of that on Tags app, but I digress. The last demo that I want to show you is the big thing that folks say is great to do with Blazor, and that's WebAssembly. So let's restart this. I'm going to back up and I'm going to create .NET new. We did .NET new Blazor, and I want to see the list here. So I'm going to create it and say run this with WebAssembly. So it'll run the code in the browser. All right. So if I say .NET new Blazor, my let's call this just WASM app. And, right, interactive WebAssembly. .NET new Blazor, yeah. Really? .NET new Blazor -o WebAssembly. Did I spell that wrong? WebAssembly, yeah. -int, wrong one. There we go. And there we go. .NET SLN add my WASM app. Oh, okay. I forgot about this. WebAssembly apps build and deliver content that run on the server and in the browser. Because there's code running in two different locations, it's two different projects. So check this out. I'll go back over into Visual Studio Code. Under my WASM app, now there's a solution file here that says, well, here's two sets of files that work, two sets of projects that work together. So there it is. So I have a server app that has that program CS that configures the web server, that has components including all my pages. And then I have a client app that includes the parts we want to run in the browser, like my counter page. And if you look at this, it's identical to the content we had for the server-side interactive counter page. But this time it says run as interactive WebAssembly. Let's run this one. So I'll drop into my WASM app, and the base project here that doesn't have the dot client is the server one. This is where the application hosts and builds the web server, and it loads in the client project that has the components to run on the server, in the browser. You're running into an issue with forwarded headers. I can talk to you more about that offline. I want to get through this. I've only got a few minutes left. So this content runs on the server, right? If I look at my server components here, right? So components, pages, there's my home page, and it's just static HTML. There's nothing interactive about it. There's my weather page. It runs statically on the server and streams content back. But that counter page is now WebAssembly. We're telling it this is a render mode of WebAssembly. Run this in the browser. So if I go back over here to counter and I click this, right, there it is running in the browser. Now, you may have noticed it took just a few seconds there to start up and load because it was downloading and putting the application down in the background. All right. But this is running in the browser. There's nothing going back and forth to the server to present that content. So there was a fetch to go get all the CSS and JavaScript, but as I interact with the server, nothing is changing. Nothing is fetching over here. It's C# running directly in the browser, okay? Now, it'll pre-render that content and paint that HTML so that you can run it when and where you want it, right here. That's amazingly powerful stuff. We've built with the same language, the same framework, the same tools, the same HTML, the same C#, but we're able to specify the different places we want it to run. It's very cool stuff. There's so much more that we can do with Blazor that I want to share with you. We're going to do more with it in this video series going forward. It's AMA all the time. We're going to be discussing and answering your questions. We're going to be going through some real examples and building and talking about the Blazing Pizza Workshop updated for .NET 8. The source code isn't available yet. There's my Outlook telling me time's up. And we're going to do more about this, and we're going to answer your questions. If there's more you want to know, more questions you want to ask about it, check out, of course, in the discussion area just below me here on YouTube. You can ask questions there. We'll respond to that. There was a link to my Discord earlier. You can absolutely jump into there, ask questions, and we're happy to help you out and go forward. But every Wednesday at 9 a.m. Eastern, 6 a.m. Pacific, 1300 UTC, you're going to find me right here answering questions and teaching about Blazor. Make sure you check out my blog at jeffreyfritz.com. Follow me on all the social medias. I am CSharpFritz, and check out my C# series for beginners, csharpinthecards.com. Thank you so much for joining me today. We're going to be talking more about Blazor in the weeks ahead. It's been a pleasure having you here. If you're watching on YouTube, thanks so much for watching. Have a fantastic rest of your day. If you're on Twitch, let's set up for a raid. Let's catch up with another live coder, somebody else who's streaming, talking about tech here on Twitch. And let me get you connected to the APIs in Action event just starting over on the Microsoft Developer channel. We're going to raid over there and join them as they're talking about building APIs, hosting them on Azure, doing some really cool stuff. Thank you so much for tuning in. It's always a pleasure. And I will see you tomorrow on my channel. We'll be building and working on Blazor applications, kind of freestyle, but always AMA is turned on there. And I'll be right back here teaching and discussing with you Blazor next week with C# with CSharpFritz. Take care.